Hi everyone, Max and the Millions, Chapter 8. I'm sitting in my garden, so my neighbours will probably think I'm talking to myself, but we'll give it a go. Chapter 8. Max opened the door and stepped inside. He was speechless. The first thing he noticed was that Mr. Darrow's bedroom had changed. Lots of things were the same, the light was still on, the bed was still unmade, but the entire floor was covered in sand. Didn't make any sense. When Max left, there'd only been a handful of sand beside the castle, but that was... Max stopped. He'd just seen the castle. There was a flag sticking out the top of it. The flag was tiny, no bigger than a stamp. That wasn't the only thing that was different about the castle. It also had wooden walls around it, with gates and guard posts and watchtowers, and inside the walls were... Max grabbed the microscope goggles from Mr. Darrow's desk and marched over to the castle. He crouched down, pulled the goggles over his head and focused on the floor beneath him. His breath caught in his throat. The castle was surrounded by hundreds of miniature wooden huts, thousands in fact. The huts had doorways and windows and roofs made of microscopic palm leaves and chimneys with actual smoke coming out of them. Max could even see furniture and fireplaces and unmade beds through their minuscule hand-carved windows. And standing in the street, staring up at him, were thousands upon thousands of tiny blue-haired people. Max laughed in disbelief. The people were no bigger than ants, and there was every kind of person you could imagine. Young people and old people and dukes and duchesses and babies and beggars all staring back up at him. They were so realistic that Max could swear some of them were actually pointing at him too. Mr. Darrow hadn't just come back, he'd turned Max's castle into a kingdom. It was the most beautiful, perfect, intricate model Max had seen in his entire life. Who else but Mr. Darrow could have made it? Who else could have created an entire city filled with thousands of handmade people who really did look like they were pointing and screaming and running away and... Max stopped. He took the goggles off, blinked a few times and looked back down. This time he really couldn't believe his eyes. He wasn't imagining it. This wasn't like the time he'd accidentally inhaled too much model glue fumes and thought his bedroom ceiling was made of toast. The tiny people were running away from him, all of them. It all happened in the blink of an eye, like watching a sped-up film. The people scattered through the city at super-fast speed, making whisper-quiet squeaks of terror. Max could see parents pulling their children into huts and slamming the doors, and soldiers leaping onto the backs of fleas and riding away, and crowds pouring down the side street like trickles of bright blue rainwater. This wasn't a model. These weren't handmade people. They were alive. And then Max saw a tiny movement on the sand in front of him. It was a boy. He was standing on his own outside the city, just in front of Max's right foot. If Max had moved another centimetre forward, he'd have crushed the boy like a bug without realising it. Max stared at the boy. The boy stared back. He had bright blue hair and bright blue eyes and bright blue robes that were far too big for him, and balanced on his head was a tiny wooden crown.